Good afternoon, guys, and welcome to the podcast. And I've got Adam Callinan coming from Montana, and he's from Pentane, and he's an entrepreneur. He's done a lot of amazing work, including he's the podcast host. He's written for Inc. And he's got 2 exits as well. And I'm really happy to have him on to discuss his work with Pentane and how it can help the audience. Adam, welcome.
Thank you for having me. Excited to be here.
Yeah. Briefly introduce yourself and what led you to start.
I have always been in an entrepreneurial role. Out of college, I went into a medical device company as a startup. I was not the founder, but I was the first outside person. And we built that up and spun off a tech piece that I sold out of in 2013, and then started a consumer product company with my cousin called BottleKeeper. That was a side project that went mad. From the scar tissue I had from my prior medical device company, I vowed to never hire a person in that BottleKeeper company. And so we had to build systems and structure that would allow us to operate a scalable e-commerce brand with no team. And we did that very successfully. We got to 8 million in 3 years with no employees, no investors, and then grew from there into tens of millions. Went on Shark Tank, got acquired in 2021. And then Pentane came as another side project gone mad. I started consulting some companies we had invested in and realized they had a hard time understanding how to intentionally drive profit and all the levers that you can pull inside of a business to impact profit and revenue. And they're just math problems. And those are things that we did really well at BottleKeeper that drove that outcome. So I started rebuilding systems inside these companies, and it completely changed them. One of which I got paid as an advisor to help turn around, and they went from losing $100,000 a month to profitable 3 months later on the basis of all this math. So Pentane is the result of that experience over more than 14 years, I guess.
Yeah. Interesting. And so it looks like you help companies grow and scale using systems and processes. And so what kind of, for the audience listening, we've got doctor, lawyer, we got entrepreneurs, startup founders, influence coaches, speakers. So people listening, which client do you serve, and what is their pain point or their frustration or their biggest aspiration?
The math inside of Pentane is universal in that it is the same math that every business on the planet runs off of. Exxon, you're the landscaper down the street, BottleKeeper, every business runs on the math. Who we focus on is primarily early stage consumer brands right now. And that's largely because it's where I can get my hands dirty and be the most helpful, where we can build systems to be the most helpful based on my most recent experience. The problems that they have are many. At face value, they don't generally understand how the business is operating from a profitability standpoint until they get a P&L in 4 to 6 weeks, which is worthless at that point. One of the big things that we see, which really was the basis of that turnaround that I mentioned, is an under $30 or $40 million consumer brand that's spending. So let's really shrink that down. Let's focus on the $5 million a year consumer brand that is trying to acquire customers online and spending money on paid media with ad budgets. Those ad budgets are generally arbitrary. They're just made up. They're built based on what they think is right and what they're comfortable spending. And the reality is they have a business that has an engine in it, and depending on the amount of weight they have in the car, in their payroll and their office and all these fixed expenses that are added weight to the business, depending on how much weight they have in the car, the ad spend and the paid media is the fuel for the engine. So they may not be putting enough fuel in the engine to drive the car. And they don't know that until it doesn't work, and they don't know why. So one of the things Pentane does is uses math to tell them how to dynamically create ad budgets and show them how they need to perform in order to achieve a net profit goal that they set. So they have to define what good means, which is a whole other challenge that just doesn't generally get done.
Interesting. Yeah. And I know you offer demos, and people that book a demo, what kind of numbers? It almost reminds me of going in the cockpit and seeing all the dials, and what can people expect when they book a demo with you?
Yeah, they will see there are 3 parts to Pentane. And to be fair, a lot of it depends in the first 5 minutes of that conversation. We talk about their business and what they have going on in their company, which is important. Mm-hmm. I can just rattle through a demo, but some of it may not be relevant and some might be more relevant than others. So it's good to identify that in advance. But where we generally start is in what we call a guidance system. And that is the place where there is, I know from your education, you'll probably appreciate the math. I know it freaks a lot of people out, but the way the return on ad spend performance, which is a marketing efficiency metric, it's an output metric. The way that interacts with ad spend as you increase it is it creates a negative log curve. So it's like an upside down hockey stick laying on its back. And we have a slider that you slide along the x-axis, which increases the ad spend amount. And you get to see dynamically how the return on ad spend comes down. They're inversely correlated for every company on the planet. And the interactive nature of that experience is really eye-opening for a business operator, because they also get to say, if we want to test increasing our prices by 10%, all the math in that system changes because the math changes. If we want to add a new person or cut some payroll, the math changes. You get to pull all these levers to see how they interact with each other without having to know and do the math, which is really the complex part that most people are not going to tackle.
Interesting. Yeah. And it sounds like the other question I have for you is, once you're armed with this information and this data, what sort of action steps or what sort of areas that business owners or entrepreneurs can pinpoint and target, and specifically certain things that will increase the ROI or drastically improve revenue, profitability, margins, etc.?
Yeah, I would say there's a Maslow's hierarchy of needs with respect to what you can do. The big heavy things, the base of that pyramid generally revolves around fixed expenses. That's where companies have a tendency to get in trouble and not know it. So when a company comes into Pentane, there's another part of the system called a mission control. I have a 3-year-old son. We talk spaceships a lot, so everything is space themed. In our mission control, the business operator will put in where they want their net margin to be. If they want to get to break even, they put in 0. If they want it to be 7%, they put in 7%. And mission control immediately tells them 4 things they can do to accomplish that. The first thing on the list is cut your fixed expenses by $12,472 a month, and you'll accomplish a 10% net margin, or whatever that net margin goal is. The second is increase your prices by 7.2%, whatever the math says. The next is increase your website conversion rate from 0.77 to 0.92. The next is increase your ad budget to $32,000 a month at a 3.9 return on ad spend. So it's really directive. The fixed expense component, most business operators can go through their P&L and start to pick out things where they might be a little bit heavy. Price testing is a thing that's really important, particularly in e-com. If that's not something you know to do, we have partners to connect you to that can help. A/B testing and web optimization is a whole sort of part art, part science. We have partners that we can connect you to help. So it's important that you get the information and the things to go and do, but it's also really important to me as a fellow operator that if you don't know how to do them, that we can connect you with the people that can help.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. And the other question I have for you is, what sort of type of, like, when they should start considering working with Pentane or booking a demo, or what sort of revenue or ad spend should companies be targeting in order to start to see some benefit from working with Pentane?
We have companies in Pentane that are spending $0 on ads. So it's not, the ad spend component in the guidance system is a attractive feature. Most consumer brands are spending something on advertising, but we have companies in the system that are startups and working on a projected P&L. Where I think it gets useful is generally at about $1 million a year in revenue plus, because you've figured out enough to where the engine in the car is running. And now we're trying to figure out how to add more fuel to the engine and get it burning hotter. The minimum barrier to entry is that you have an actual P&L, like a real P&L. Again, it can be projected, but it can't be, this is a thing that you see in really early stage businesses where the operators are living out of the P&L and it's like paying their rent and their car payments. And if you want to do that's totally fine, but that's not, the math inside that P&L is garbage. So you're going to get a garbage in, garbage out situation.
Huh, interesting. A follow-up question I have for you is, what sort of businesses do well with this analysis? Is it e-commerce? Is it service-based businesses, software? What types of businesses should start considering Pentane?
We're focused on e-commerce, again, just because I can get on a call with an e-com founder and we can talk the same language and I can be really helpful with them. We just onboarded a $2 million a year landscaping service company here in Montana that has the same problems. Pentane is a software SaaS product. We have the same things. We're not spending money on paid media, but there are a lot of other components of the system that provide you with real-time information about what's happening from a daily operation and profitability standpoint, and understanding how you add and remove expenses impact the bottom line. So we are, again, to be very clear, we are focused on e-commerce, but we get a fair amount of outreach from things completely unrelated to e-commerce because it's a relatively standard challenge.
Yeah. And then the corollary to the next question is, what sort of APIs do you have to integrate with like existing businesses if they're using like Shopify or Amazon or QuickBooks, and also like analytics like Google or Meta, TikTok? How do you integrate that with Pentane?
We have all of the APIs you just mentioned. The first suite of APIs we built is built around a company like BottleKeeper was. So it's QuickBooks Online, Shopify, Amazon Ads, TikTok, Meta, Pinterest, Google Ads, etc. We have the ability to pull in data from almost anywhere with a Zapier integration and some creativity, but that our primary API suite today is built toward an e-com business.
Yeah. And that's really interesting. And so for people, we have a question from the audience, and that question is, what is the rationale behind the name Pentane? How did you come up with that name?
I came up with that name because I'm a nerd, and I have a degree in molecular and cellular biology, and pentane is a hydrocarbon. It's part of the alkane family. And when I was looking for names for the company, I went to Octane, and quickly I know of a company that's a SaaS company called Octane AI. So I started going down the list of alkanes and got to the one that had no business noise around it. And I could buy the domain for $2,000, and that was Pentane. So Pentane is a 5-carbon molecule that makes the shape of a W for you non-organic chemistry people that we inverted to make it look like it's a graph going up, but it's just a very simple, highly combustible
Interesting.
chemical. Yeah.
The other question I have for you is, how are you thinking about or positioning yourself with AI and all of the integrations, potential integrations? How are you thinking about that, or even using it currently?
I personally use it a lot, and I use it a lot for code development and things for a consumer site that I manage for Pentane. I have very intentionally not integrated it into the product because I don't today have a really strong use case for it. And we are not going to be another software platform that bolts AI onto it and suddenly we're an AI company, which is what 95% of the companies are doing right now, which I think is ridiculous. There's a really strong use case for, as we continue to develop our product line, particularly in the marketing world, being able to dig into incredibly large amounts of data and pull out interesting tidbits with respect to ad, all the way down to the ad level and performance things. And we will build for that. But we have to be really careful how we use AI in our development cycles because it's so math heavy, and AI is really bad at math. It operates at about an 8th grade level right now, which is fine. Let's be honest, that's better at math than most parents like me and my friends are, but it's not. We're doing a lot of this stuff. That negative log curve is plotting lines with calculus along a curve. So math, it can't do that stuff. So we have to be really careful that it doesn't, AIs with like cursor and things like that have a tendency to go in and change things that are unintentional, which the worst thing we can do is have the math be wrong and be giving guidance to a company that they need to be doing something and it not be correct. So we're really sensitive to that.
Yeah. Last final question, because your Pentane's been featured in CNBC, Inc., Forbes, a big mainstream. What is your long-term vision for Pentane? Is it an IPO, or is it just raise venture capital, or talk about that?
I believe in building companies that are durable and which requires them to be profitable. This is exactly what we did with BottleKeeper, that have multiple points of value within the business so that they can survive through the ups and downs of markets. And if you build a truly valuable, durable business, someone will always want to buy it. So I'm enjoying what we're doing. We're still in the early stages, which is the phase of business and startups that I absolutely love. I have a lot of big vision and ideas and places to take it. If someone comes and offers us some ungodly amount of money at some point, we would listen, but that's not really on the roadmap at this point.
Interesting. Yeah, I forgot an M&A or an acquisition, but yeah, interested. And so for the audience out there that are interested in entrepreneurship, either SaaS or just other, what are your final parting thoughts or words of inspiration? How can people follow you and check out Pentane, see if it book a demo, etc.?
Yeah, the second part to that you can find at pentane.com. I spent a little bit of time on LinkedIn, so you can find me there. The parting advice to a potential entrepreneur is just do something. We get into this like analysis paralysis mode where we're always waiting for some like magical event to appear. And the reality is it's the doing that is the experience. What you learn from the doing is absolute, it is magic. And so just get started doing something. Don't go and take a bunch of risk and quit your job and jump off the cliff. Get things moving before you jump off the cliff. But none of that can happen until you just get started. Like just do something, anything.
Yeah. I think that's from Paul Graham, and he said just do that, do anything and get feedback. And the best startups are the ones that iterate like very quickly. They have like very short iteration cycles, so they just keep failing and repeating failing, and eventually get some product market fit. And yeah, really great conversation, and really enjoyed learning more about Pentane and what it does. And keep up the great work.
Thanks for having me. Enjoyed the time.